check.
Check. Everybody's alive. We are live.
Shirt on.
Yeah. Marty's doing a last minute bit of hair and makeup as we go live.
Me, guys. I'm the early one now. Jeez, it's so early.
Oh my goodness. All right, this is DCA Live. We have a literally, as Jason Calacanis would say, a packed docket. We have a lot of stuff going on, including a lot of breaking news, and market is pumping. Bitcoin had a good weekend, but it did a little bit of a flush over the last 20 minutes or so, but it's coming back, and everything else is doing really well. There's so much to cover, a lot of stuff happening with alts, a lot of stuff happening with treasuries, with strategic Bitcoin reserves, with retail investors and how they're flipping to different assets. But before we jump into this massive agenda, let's go around the horn real quick. Mando, good afternoon.
Hey man, yeah, great week. It really has been fantastic. I thought we'd honestly hang out in the 90s a little bit longer, and then Bitcoin just smashed through 100K. I did say that if it smashed through 100K, I think it would go to all-time high pretty quick. It feels like it's gonna maybe do that this week.
In fact, that's a good point, because I've been watching it. It's been a very gradual climb. Maybe CTO, we can talk about the chart afterwards. Bitcoin, it's a gradual accumulation. You know, there are AI algos snagging anything that comes for sale, and that's price action I've never seen before. We'll get to that in a minute. Marty, how are you this fine morning?
I'm terrific. It's early here. Just got back in. Everything's good. Going to plan. The Wyckoff doesn't lie. Absolutely played out to perfection. The game now is not to give anybody any entries. No perpetual trade as an entry. Very hard to go long. We should keep running, I think, to all-time high.
Yeah, we'll challenge you on the Wyckoff later, by the way, because I think it's M2 that's driving the price action, not the Wyckoff. And I've never seen a Wyckoff go like this. But we'll get back to that too. And CTO, how are you?
Fantastic. Of course, it's a very happy week. We were very bullish here last Monday, and very nice to see this. I'm really happy.
All right, well, let's get into the actual story today for everybody, and thank you to everybody for coming and the Mazda chats. By the way, before I forget, links below on my channel for everybody here, all of the places where they are, newsletters from Mando, of course, Twitter from Mando. Marty has his very active Twitter and Twitter Spaces, CTO, his website, his YouTube channel, his X, all that good stuff. But let's get into our story today. Quick agenda. We will look at the crazy, it should be 2025 surge so far. The bull run is back on. Everybody, 30% of people thought the bull run was over 5 or 6 weeks ago. That's different. M2 is like clockwork. We'll look at more treasuries. And there's a lot of talk right now about the potential for a super cycle. I hate that super cycle talk, but we will talk about it because everybody's talking about it. And are we going into that euphoric parabolic phase in the next 100 days? Also, very interesting stuff happening with retail investors versus ETFs versus treasuries. The treasuries are absolutely insane right now. And everybody's talking about yields and staking and yield on Bitcoin and so much more. And we'll talk about the trade deal that just happened, which is why the market's on fire, and so much more. Let's get into it. Let's start with where we are right now, perhaps with a chart from CTO. Just to set the stage. Why can't I set the stage? Hang on a second. Remove this. Add this. Boom. There we go.
Yeah, it's fantastic to see this, guys. And last week we were below this volume here. I talked about this last Monday, that the next step was really to push through this volume peak. And we did. We really just sliced through it. And now today we came all the way up to the range high. Look here, it almost touched on the dollar. So now we have done a lot of things here. When we broke down this here in February, we got the price target. We hit the price target. Price turned around. It was like a massive reaction back up. We got back in the range. Trend turned up. We got through the volume. And now is the final step. Now we're just below, today, we're just below the range high, which stopped price. How many times? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think it's 12 individual days. If we punch through this now on the 13th try or something like that, then Bitcoin will be in price discovery. If we punch through this level, we enter a new phase for Bitcoin. We never got through there previously. If we get through now and don't immediately get kicked back like all the previous times, we are in a new era for Bitcoin. We will be in price discovery, and the targets then are way higher than we are today. So this is really the last step before the liftoff. Of course, we don't know what will happen, could reject, and it never happens. But I'm pretty hopeful here, as we'll talk about during the show for a lot of reasons.
Okay, let's start and make it spicy. Do you see a Wyckoff accumulation here, or is it driven by correlation to empty money supply, or are there AI algos snagging Bitcoin? Because I know Saylor has integrated AI to analyze huge amount of data to nibble on Bitcoin very, very fast in real time, and that's why he's able to buy $1.5 billion a week. What do you see in the chart? And then I'd like Marty to comment on it too. It looks like gradual accumulation to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything worked together. There was an interest to bring prices down. I mean, Wyckoff is basically a method for manipulating everyone else, manipulating the public. And yeah, perhaps that was what was going on here. Of course, the narrative helped then with the stocks crashing, macro, global unrest, all those things, which were also genuine. And price went down. Accumulation exactly at the target, and then back up. For AI, I think that definitely, I mean, short-term trading is taken over by AI. It's very difficult, I think, to be a day trader today on the 5-minute candles or something like that. But what AI cannot do is to answer the big questions. But we'll come back to that later.
Yeah. Towards the end, we do have a session on AI trading that we'll get into, which is, again, we're trying to gauge what people are really interested in right now. So let's get back to the agenda and let's talk about some of the breaking news first. MicroStrategy buys again, another big buy, like 13,400 Bitcoin is nearly $1.4 billion worth. That is pretty incredible. They have nearly 570,000 Bitcoin now, and they are not stopping. And then another day, another dollar, another Treasury. This is David Bailey, who runs Bitcoin Magazine, who was actually close to the US president, who actually convinced the US president to come and talk at the Bitcoin conference last year. This guy's well connected. Well, he is starting a company called Nakamoto. It's formerly, what they're doing is they're doing reverse mergers with existing entities, and then they're turning into Bitcoin treasury companies. We saw that with Asset last week and others. This is called Kindly MD, and they're building a Bitcoin treasury, and he's raised $710 million. So shout out to David Bailey. This is big, and it's just nonstop. And then on top of that, the reason the market's so strong, it's a bit of a night chart here as well. Sorry about the formatting, but America and China met in Geneva over the weekend. And America's tariffs in China went from 145% to 30%. But the bigger news is China's tariffs on America went from 125% to 10%. It's a 90-day kind of like ceasefire on tariffs with that deal. But that is big news. So before, I just want to get that stuff kind of out of the way before we move in. What do you guys think of those three big nuggets? Anybody?
I mean, I think the trade, the timeline of this trade negotiation has been extremely accelerated. I thought this would take a lot longer. Even Trump was saying that early on, that he would delay and delay. So I think there was a moment of clarity where Besant and Lutnick and his crew said, look, you need to do something. And you could see sort of an escalation beginning last week of negotiations with China, with every day seeming to be some new update to stimulate the market back to where we are now. So it looks like we're going to roll back to the 10% thing where we started. I think it's been a hell of a job. Pretty impressive. Even David Ackman, I mean, there's a lot of people, Trump critics, coming out and saying it's quite impressive the way it's unfolded. So here to Trump for this.
Yeah, and also let's not forget the team. People like Scott Bessent is a legend. He knows what he's doing. He understands money. He understands global markets. Mando, what are your macro thoughts on treasuries and trade deals and tariff tantrums? Was it all just to negotiate the art of the deal?
I still think there's a negotiation to take place, but I do think this is a very good sign. Like, I thought that China would be a far less willing negotiator. And now that they're down to 10%, it doesn't really matter. Like this is kind of reminds me of now the first term where he kind of did this as well. And then he really just uses the carrot and stick approach of, right, we're going to massively increase tariffs if you don't get to something by the end of the 90 days. I got the feeling that China was going to be more aggressive and not even look to do a deal, but they haven't been. Clearly, they are feeling the pain of this, and they've decided to enter negotiations, and this obviously benefits them, but they still have a 10% tariff, and I think this is good for everyone. I do think we're going to see. It makes sense that you see a big rally here across the board in stocks. The only thing to pay attention to for Bitcoin and crypto in general, gold went down quite a bit on the back of this. That's probably why Bitcoin's been underperforming today. So you see your gold drop about 3 or 4% on this headline, and that correlation works to the upside for us, but it can also work to the downside. So I think it probably makes sense that Bitcoin is slightly underperforming today. It's kind of lower actually on the day versus most other things higher.
Yeah.
And then you have bond yields have gone slightly higher again. So that whole trend, which has been going on for a while now, has continued back to an uptrend. So the 10-year, I think, is still at 4.5%, which is not amazing as a sign.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think Bitcoin can rally here.
Getting back to gold, I made a post about 3 weeks ago. It was like a pair chart of gold versus Bitcoin, and it looked like the perfect opportunity to rotate from gold into Bitcoin. And it was. Since then, basically, you know, gold gets its moment in the sun, typically lasts like 3 or 4 months, and then it eventually runs out of steam, and then Bitcoin catches up. So it was also quite predictable. CTO, tariffs. What do you think?
I'm very happy to see this. I mean, the tariff, well, it was a very real problem. Like if that got cemented, so the global trade reduces, at least short term, over the next 1, 2, 3 years, that would lower the profits for companies in the US and outside the US. It's just inevitable if that had gotten cemented. And that would mean a stock market drop, a substantial one, perhaps much bigger than the 21% that we got, because that's not much if we look at previous crashes. So I'm very happy to see that it doesn't seem to be going that route. It seems more and more like this was art of the deal negotiation, and they're trying to wrap it up as soon as possible and, you know, send markets up again. So yeah, I was very happy to see this. I was surprised nothing moved last night. This was announced last night, this announcement from Geneva, and nothing happened in the market. I thought it was like a mega news, actually. It kind of indicates that this is going to end.
Well, actually, that's an interesting angle, because I was watching too, and I was watching the S&P futures. They started to rise up. Okay, they liked it. And then things like Tesla and NVIDIA, they were bombing last night. Up huge. I mean, Tesla and NVIDIA, they're up massive today. But Bitcoin didn't move, which tells me maybe Bitcoin is more becoming a risk-off asset like gold. Like Bitcoin loves the tariffs. It loves uncertainty. But now that the deal is done, it didn't actually have that huge spike. But again, we have had that constant accumulation for Bitcoin, which is cool. And the question is...
I mean, I'm sorry, I was wrong there. I mean, the stocks moved massively. Apple up 6%, Nvidia 4%, Tesla 7%, everything up. China's stocks also up. So huge. But why didn't Bitcoin move? I thought maybe it would see like a 5-10K candle there almost. But no,
yeah, it's a risk-off asset, perhaps, just one theory. Or it you know, sometimes Bitcoin sniffs out things that we don't see till later. But this is also the big story: Bitcoin and Global M2 from Joe Consorti. Literally, you can't make up this correlation. Delay by 10 weeks. It is picture perfect, which tells us it has worked and we have a long way to go. Thoughts on M2 correlation? Or, Marty, do you think it's just Wyckoff?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much a contrarian to this discussion you guys just had. Once again, I don't believe narrative has anything to do with it. There was $1.87 billion of longs opened at 102,800, and Binance ran it down pretty much instantaneous this morning. It's got nothing to do with news. I think Bitcoin is always catching up to gold. That is the big catch-up trade. Gold ran up, got a lower high. Bitcoin turned up, followed liquidity. I agree with you on that. I think Bitcoin follows global liquidity. With regards to the China thing, I don't think anybody realized the effect. Well, I think in Trump's, give respect to Trump. China went through economic downturn more than the Western news told you. China was in big trouble from this. They were actually more desperate to make a deal than anybody else. News coming out of China, I pick up a lot of Chinese news from my community. Dismal. Factories closing, businesses closing, people on the brink of bankruptcy. This trade game Trump played with China almost took China to the brink. And so they've come around. And I think that's part of the story that people weren't told.
Yeah, Marty, you did right there. It was tragic. I was watching YouTube videos on the ground in China, and there were people like little factories that make little things, belts and shirts and other little components. And they were literally shutting down their shop that they have their life in. And they were crying, and you don't see Chinese wear their heart on their sleeve at all, but they were devastated. It reminded me of C19, those times. While I have you on, by the way, Marty, I want to talk about this. We'll get back to M2 in a second. But manipulation over, you mentioned Binance running down that big long to liquidate them. Again, if you put on a big long, there's people looking at you and you will be hunted. So be careful with your leverage. Walk us through this big news and then Mando afterwards.
Huge thing. Absolutely, guys. For years, I've been, pretty much begging everyone from the CME to the old CFTC chief to Cynthia Loomis about keeping crypto futures live over the weekend, because over the weekend, Bybit and Binance just had all the power and they did all their cleaning up over the weekend, and we were literally powerless and had to just watch it. For a while, they were liquidating shorts. For a while, they were liquidating longs, but it was just untethered dominance. And you saw last week, finally, Coinbase announced it would run its futures over the weekend. It started on the 9th, last Friday, after the market, and we saw a much more stable market over the weekend. The next will be the CME group, if they can keep their Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana options open and their futures open, I think. And also with the acquisition of Coinbase buying the big options exchange, Deribit, I think we're going to see the reduction of Binance's dominance over the price over the weekend reduce. And this is very good for crypto. This, the volatility of crypto in the early days was very attractive to traders, but for long-term holders and large side positioning, the volatility has always been the reason for them to avoid crypto. Charles Schwab, they've all made the same statements. It's too volatile for our customers. So volatility is not our friend. We need to remove some of the volatility, and that volatility comes from the futures market. So these moves are incredibly important. I think we will see over the course of the next few weeks much more stability in the price of crypto based on these moves as we go forward.
Mando, as a TradFi guy, what's your take on that? I think this is extremely good news, because I used to just watch the weekends and you'd see these flushes. They drop 2,000 Bitcoin onto the market, dive the price down. You can see the liquidation layer. You can literally pick the bottom of Bitcoin within $100 based on what they were hunting. So, Mando, how good is this for the markets and crypto, and to save retail investors from getting wrecked?
People maybe don't have the context of how big Binance is related to the rest of the market at the moment, and this is the point that Marty's saying. It does about 8 times the volume of Coinbase in spot, and sometimes even higher on perps, right? So it is massive at the moment, and we want that to come down, because it's very, very true that that you can never prove it, but yes, these guys are known for pushing around markets, and particularly on quiet weekends, that can be very, very painful. So but in the context of global markets, they're not going to be as big as the US financial system. So if you start to get some of these big US powerhouses coming in to trade spot and trade perps, it's going to be way harder for them to do that. It will make it feel more like the FX market, where you need, tens of billions of dollars to start pushing around different currencies. And I think that is what we will hope to see in the medium term here. This is a good sign. Very, very good sign.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, I at one point was very much aware of all of their techniques. I mean, people are very unaware of the power of Binance currently. Remember, they have the largest spot market, the largest futures market. They have their own blockchain, which is in the top 5. They literally have unbelievable. You talk about the Fed having some tools, for their dual mandate. Binance is loaded with tools. So they can literally just turn off or lower the funding fees on their longs and short side and move the price that way. They have infinite ways to move the price, and it's offshore and unregulated. And the more we can lower their dominance over their ability to manipulate, the better for our asset class. I've been a proponent of this for a long time, and I will continue and keep the good word going. Binance's dominance over crypto needs to end.
Awesome. Well said. Let's talk about this real quick. We're seeing a lot of people are very excited about a very bullish MACD indicator. CTO, I don't know if you agree with that, but this bullish moving average convergence is out of control. And when you compare it to historic cycles, it basically tells you, and this is really extreme hopium, but the price could scoot up 150%. We could be talking about $250,000 Bitcoin. And the institutional adoption is off the hook. Let me just give you some points. Sailor, in the last 6 months, has bought the next 3 years of supply. BlackRock, over the last 13, 14 months, has bought the next 4 years of supply. 2 players, basically 7, 8, 9, 10 years of supply. If they did it at the same time after the next halving, that goes out to double the time frame. I hope people can get that. I'm probably not explaining it very well. But there's more treasuries coming left, right, and center. And this is before we even talk about nation-state Bitcoin reserves. A lot of people talking about Supercycle, bullish surge. Is this all, whatever, long-term holders will just sell into any price increases? CTO, what do you think of the technical setup, first of all?
Yeah. So maybe, I don't know if I should show the chart first.
Yeah,
perhaps.
Yeah.
So the situation is that there's a lot of great indicators. MACD is one of them. And, absolutely it works. And then I can stop sharing. The fact is that if you take a book, any book in technical analysis, you open it on any page and you apply that, it's generally going to work. The difficulty isn't the analysis. The reason people still manage to lose money in something like Bitcoin is that they let the emotions take over. They don't have any system and they don't do any analysis. That's why they get wrecked. The difficulty isn't to find something that works. MACD is another one. It shows strength. Great. There's a lot of indications that show strength right now. So a better model, a better mental model, I think that's been very helpful for me, is instead to look at price. What is price doing? It's going up. So there is people buying. Then why are the buyers buying? And if it's going down, why are the sellers doing? So what is the price doing? Well, it's going up. It's nearing breakout. Why is it going up? What are the buyers doing? Why are they doing that? And what are the sellers doing? And I think if we break out from this level, there's so many reasons for why price can continue up, like you just showed. And then what are the sellers going to do? Are they really going to sell that breakout? I doubt it, unless they have some plan of manipulation, as Martin talked about before. But I think most people who try to make money here over the medium term, they're not going to sell that breakout. That would be mad because of all these factors. Every single indicator you pick showing strength if we get the breakout. We have all these companies, Treasury is buying. Sailor is buying like crazy. It's going to keep buying. Sovereigns are buying. Nations are talking about it. Bitcoin is in its strongest point ever, perhaps. And a lot of people are coming to the table to buy, and I think fewer people are going to come to the table to sell at this point, at that point, if we get the breakout. So, I mean, the numbers you show here are definitely possible. And we talked about it before. It could even go further. It could go to 300,000 and so on. So, and we don't really need to predict it. We can sit and see what happens, see how far it goes.
Yeah, and a lot of very conservative projections are now between. So I have this spreadsheet that looks at all the so-called expert analysts, and then I kind of weight them. And now we're seeing like some of the people you can kind of rely on. 123 to 185K could be the top of the range, but then again, a lot of people sometimes believe the bear market's over. It'll just be constant accumulation. There's a world where I see that happening. And then if history repeats and the time zone repeats, and in less than 100 days, we enter the euphoric parabolic zone. So, Mando, is this hocus pocus, or does this have legs? Or is this time different?
Look, it's a little bit difficult at very close to the recent level of resistance for us to be like all in, like this is the time. I still think sometimes these things can take a little bit longer. Or like there can be really nasty wicks around this sort of time, because it definitely feels like, just to give some context to people who are paying attention to the wider crypto universe, a lot of altcoins went nuts over the last few weeks, particularly the last week. So the meme coin market cap go all the way back up to 80 billion. A lot of the coins in the AI and the meme coin space have done 3-4x's over the last week alone. So if suddenly feels, people are starting to take a bit more risk again, and normally when that happens, you kind of have like a 3 or 4 week window of like really extreme risk taking, and then it can get a little bit dangerous. I do think that Bitcoin's going to go up to 150K, 200K by Q4. I think we're going to have a decent period here, particularly if it breaks out of all-time highs. That's always a beautiful moment for Bitcoin, where it just keeps on going for a while normally. I don't know if that happens this week. Like, I don't want to predict to you guys, like, go all in right now, because often when this frothiness happens, it can be very short-lived and people can get really badly burnt. Like, if Bitcoin went down to just 99K, which would not be a big move, or 95K, like, you could see some crazy moves lower in some of these altcoins. So I think just be kind of aware that don't not be invested, but know that like there may be some really nice wicks at this month over the next couple of weeks, where as Bitcoin tends to go up towards all-time high, volatility increases again, particularly when it goes through all-time high as well. So be aware of your entries if you're buying it.
Yeah, and well said regarding, like, I'm seeing crazy stuff happening in the retail market. It's like all of a sudden Bitcoin is now an institutional treasury game, and retailers are still looking for their pot of gold. So let me see if I can pull up some sites. We might as well switch gears. This, of course, Supercycle good. Retail has been shifting literally. And this might be unit bias. It's like retail isn't buying $105,000 Bitcoin, but they are buying $3 SUI and even $170 Solana. Solana came back to life after dipping below $100 a few weeks ago. Now it's nearly at 180, and the Solana treasuries are out of control. But the question is, I think it was a week or so ago, we saw a massive turn in alt season on the monthly as being a very positive indicator. Mando, just to wrap up with you, alt season, is it back?
I'm still a believer that Bitcoin dominance will continue to go higher over the medium term. It does feel for the next, at least for this week, the big mover this week as well, by the way, was ETH, right?
Yeah.
We talk a lot of bad stuff about ETH this cycle, about how they need to change stuff. They did do a Petra upgrade in the middle of the week, and ETH has suddenly turned deflationary again. It's been deflationary every day since that upgrade. It's burning around, I think, 100 to 400 ETH a day. Now, I think that is a big shift in narrative for ETH as a currency, because we'd always said, that the issue is there is the value of the network isn't going back to ETH. They did do something, and ETH is looking like I think it's up 40% over the last week. That's the one to watch for with Bitcoin dominance and altcoin season. If you can get back onto the ETH story, and look, we've seen this for so many coins which are down and out, and then over the course of 3-4 weeks, they just go nuts. Look at XRP a few months ago, right? It just went absolutely nuts. I would not want to be short ETH. Yeah,
it's so funny. I went to Ultrasound Money to see exactly how deflationary. Yeah, our
Broken.
information is not available. So it's like, as a technologist like CTO and Marty, you probably laugh at that one. Anyway, I hear what you're saying, Mando. It's definitely good news, and it's good that sometimes that, like, at least historically, the big motherships run first, and then the smaller coins run second. But now it's kind of all over the place. Everything is kind of running at different times. Marty, over to you. Alt season, is it kicking in or not?
I mean, we saw Bitcoin dominance run up to all-time high 66% and then give up 4%, 3.5% over the last hours. And they went straight into Ethereum. It's almost like an exact match. So from 7% to 9.25. So I think there was a large trade, probably BlackRock, between Bitcoin back into Ethereum. So that would trigger, typically in the cycle, first Bitcoin runs to its dominance high, then it moves into Ethereum moves to its dominance high, and then it moves into smaller coins. Now, I think that's changed a lot. Specifically, if you look at the CME tracked cryptos, that's Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana. So how does Solana fit into that? I think there is a little bit of confusion. Players are trying to adjust. But all I'm looking at really is the pairing. So if you look at Sol BTC, you see it bottomed at 001. It's on the move back up in a reverse head and shoulders. Sol ETH had a huge pump in Solana's favor and gave it all back on this move back from Ethereum back to 0.7. And ETH BTC also had a nice pull up from the bottom at 0.2. So for people at home, just watch those pairs. Those are really the most important thing. Large size traders like BlackRock and the OTC desks, that's where they're trading. They're trading pair trades. That's Sol BTC, Sol ETH, ETH BTC, etc. You can really see what's going on there. And XRP dominance also went up to 4.58. As you saw last week, they threw out the final lawsuit between the SEC and Ripple with a $50 million slap on the wrist. And that did get a little shock into XRP. BNB, on the other hand, can't get back over 3%. So
actually, double clicking into XRP, Marty, over the last 90 days, XRP was flat while everything else went up. So XRP hasn't been the hero, perhaps.
XRP still due, I would say, for a 50% pullback on that move. I think XRP, I wouldn't see. I think it'll come down to your dotted line there. I think this line here you have. Yep.
Okay.
I think XRP is due for a pullback.
CTO, one of the things that Manda said was very interesting is he sees Bitcoin dominance going higher. Now, that is absolutely logical. And my reason behind that is because the institutions and the Bitcoin reserves and the treasuries have way more money than the retail investor.
Right.
The retail investor can't move alts the way institutions can move Bitcoin, follow the money. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, so there were so many, I agree with everything you guys said, but let's dive into them because there were so many good points here. So what Mando's saying here is that the Bitcoin dominance trend has been very established. If we zoom out a little bit here, this is the picture from 2017 all the way. And you see here that basically from 2022, this has just been a straight line up. And even though there was a big change now, if we zoom out here, we barely see it, right? So it does take a lot for this to change. Like an alt season looks like this in this chart. And we're not seeing that yet, right? You can barely see the drop. Of course, if we zoom in, there is a change in dynamics here, definitely. But as you saw previously, we barely saw it. So, of course, it takes more for this dynamic to medium to long-term change. But it is a first step. Altcoins looked dead last week. Now they're back. That's clear. So what that translates into, which Marty said so well here, that it's easier to figure out what's going on if looking at the pairs. So instead of looking at ETH USD, it's easier to see what is happening if you look at ETH BTC. Because then you saw something very interesting here. For several weeks, suddenly there was gigantic volume in ETH BTC. See here, this thing on the right here that shows how much volume was traded at that price. And you see this huge spike. So there was some big players buying huge amounts of Ethereum to BTC. and other people selling. So an enormous battle was going on, which we haven't seen here since for 2 years or something like that. And it actually turned. So the buyers won this battle. It shot over this level and back up. And this is much easier to see here on the ETH to BTC chart than if you're trying to find this blurred with the Bitcoin moves in the ETH to USD chart. And the other thing that was so important here that Marty said, because many people here are interested in Solana, we had something very interesting also on the pair. So as you remember, SOL to BTC since 2023 stayed in this range, completely flat almost. And then it broke down, it hit the breakdown target. But now something is changing here. Now we're getting an inverse head and shoulders, which is a bottom pattern. If this one, I think TradingView is very heavy loaded today. It's very slow because a lot of people are in charting today.
Very good.
So here you see an inverse head and shoulder, which has actually confirmed. It confirmed, was it 3-4 days ago on Friday. And so this is a bottom pattern. And again, you won't see this if you look at SOL to USD because it's too blurred together with what is happening with Bitcoin. But if you look at SOL to BTC, where the bigger players are, as Marty said, you see much clearer what's actually going on. And right now, there's a bottom pattern in SOL to BTC.
The reason why I think this is important is because other times that ETH has outperformed versus Bitcoin, there's been no reason. It's just been ETH is underperformed and it has to outperform at some time, and it got smashed back lower. Now at least there's some form of a narrative, right? We did an upgrade. It's changed the burn mechanic. Now there's it's deflationary again, and I think that's a narrative that maybe can last for more than just a week. I'm still a big believer in Bitcoin dominance going higher for a while, but when I see a chart like this, I don't know if I'm betting straight away that this goes down. Let's put it that way. That feels like it could last for another couple of weeks and at least and really cause some pain, because let's be honest, so many people are offside on ETH, right? Like everyone's called the death of ETH for like 2 years. If they even have a smidge of a narrative here, it can do an XRP. That's kind of what I'm saying.
And that would be interesting, because there's another interesting question that came up, and I will share it here. Because again, follow the money. Robbo asked the question: do you think the price of Bitcoin will inhibit new retail and all the liquidity will run into low market cap alts? So I'd like to phrase this a different way. In the past Bitcoin cycles, people would make their money in Bitcoin, and then towards the end of the bull market, they cash in on their Bitcoin, pump it into alts, make a quick 3x, 5x, 10x, and then exit the building. The problem we have now is retail don't have that much. Maximum $20 to $50 billion. And now it has to be spread across so much stuff. Again, the institutions, the treasuries, they're in control of Bitcoin, and they're not dumping it into alts. So it is a very different time around this time. Marty, what do you say to that?
I like what you're saying, James. Let's just sum it up in a nutshell. Guys, we have to understand that we're in a very different cycle in crypto. Crypto is no longer, Silk Road, tax evasion, criminal behavior, experiments. Okay, we're dealing with a larger player, institutional players. There are two narratives at play. Number one, stable coins. They are pushing so hard to get a US stablecoin regulation passed in the Senate. They're literally updating it that afternoon when it fails the vote, changing it on the fly. That is going to go through. You need to look at what blockchains, what altcoins will carry stablecoins, regulated stablecoins. That is Ethereum, Solana, Sui, a little bit of Algorand, and some L2s. Those are going to have a lot of priority. A lot of large players will be investing into those. If you're a large, look at Meta. Meta came out last week. We're bringing a stablecoin to Facebook. It got a lot of hoopla for Sui. This is happening. Everybody's going stablecoin. What does that mean? It means that tokens on these networks will become legal tender in the USA. Every business, every bank will be able to offer stablecoin. The volume on these networks is going to explode. Now, networks that don't have regulated stablecoins are not going to benefit from that. That's narrative number one. We have the SBR. We're pushing for that that could happen. But the bigger one, which James and me have been following all of last week, is every day on the SEC, new companies, publicly traded NASDAQ companies, are reporting crypto strategic reserve strategy pivots. We get a company that was doing K-12 educational videos and failing, saying, now we're going to become a crypto company. We're going to invest into Solana. We get Janover, a property company, saying we're going to reuse our ticker and become a Solana company. There's at least
Metaplanet had one hotel in Tokyo. It's crazy.
It's a huge narrative we didn't see coming. Now, these are big players. These people are buying hundreds of millions of dollars of this crypto, not retail, couple of thousand here and there. So the retail market is very much suppressed. I think what I tell people is follow the smart money, follow these big players. What they're doing, follow behind. And it seems to be working well. But I think these two narratives are important to talk about.
And this leads me to a question that is top of mind for the people watching in the audience here. And Mando, I'm going to give it to you first and then to CTO. People are confused right now. Should they be all in on Bitcoin? Should they be all in on AI? Should they be doing altcoins, memes? Should they be buying all these new Bitcoin proxies or Solana proxies or mixed bag proxies? It's so difficult now to figure out how to organize a portfolio for many people. I know what I do, and my strategy is probably very, very different to 99.999% of others. But Mando, what do you say to people here, and how have things changed in terms of how you would organize a bag? Tough question. You might be muted.
Mando's muted. Mando, there we go.
Yeah, I have a range of different assets, obviously. But in terms of crypto, what has changed for me, at least over the last 18 months, is I tend to never be all in. Like, I always keep 20%, 25% in stables, because the volatility is just so high that I think when people talk about investing, they often think about it like the US stock market, just like always be all in, always own the S&P, just put every dollar in. If you're just going to be Bitcoin only, then that makes sense. But for the bit that you want to be like risking, let's say, or like maybe even your risky portfolio, it always makes sense to have a decent cash portfolio because the volatility is wild. Like right now, in the last hour, you've seen 10, 15% moves sometimes in altcoins in an hour, right? Like that could be a whole year's of portfolio of performance by very many other like traditional metrics, even a good year. So having a bit of cash to buy when things are really, really bad, I always have a little bit higher. I am predominantly
by the way, I have to shout out to the tariff tantrums. That was a beautiful gift as well. For anybody with cash, that's exactly why you load up on cash to abuse those situations. When everybody was running for the hills, we were jumping in. So Amanda, great point regarding cash.
Yeah, then I'm mainly Bitcoin, and then I will have a slice of like 25 to 30%, which I put into more risky stuff. And that can be a range. That can be a range of different things. At the moment, I'm in some ETH and ETH meme coins right now.
But you don't touch proxies, stock proxies.
No, not generally. Not generally. Okay. Like I'm just kind of all in crypto.
Yeah.
I mean, we should tell people from last week, James. So I mean, we all saw the SEC. As it comes on the SEC, I get RSL feed, the ASST company, right? ASST asset entities. That came out the gate with as they filed on this is a new MicroStrategy company with some heavy hitters in it. We're talking Vivek, we're talking Peter Thiel. I mean, this is a major player. This stock went up 1,380% that day. So you can get crypto returns on the stock market right now if you're at the right time. So the game is changing. Crypto, not only is that, but the stock market is going 24/7, and we have Texas weeks away from announcing the opening of their New York stock, of their NASDAQ exchange 24/7. So I think stock and crypto are blending. You're going to have these proxies. You're going to have crypto futures on the traditional market. TradFi and crypto are merging. I don't think we should separate them anymore. And as far as my own personal approach is, I'm like you, Mando. I actually don't really play. I use my risk in my perpetual trading. I don't take long shots and try and get 1000x's outside of my comfort zone. I stick to the L1s, and then I keep a bag of dry powder just to constantly be absorbing, these ridiculous emotional flushes that we see like today. And this constant DCA process has been very, very successful. I don't chase the meme coins. I don't chase things with no value. I'm a much more of a fundamental crypto trader. But I think look out for these proxies on the NASDAQ. You can make a lot of money if you get in at the right time with a call option or just buy a bag. Pay attention to the SEC listings.
Yeah, and I personally am very heavy in equity proxies. I'm much more comfortable trading options on equities, although I do like to perp now and again too. CTO, when you look at this new world order, what would you advise without giving financial advice to small investors? Because now they're overwhelmed with all of these different choices: where to play, where to allocate, how to allocate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the short answer is that it hasn't really mattered, right? If you bought Bitcoin or you bought MicroStrategy or you bought one of the Solana proxies, whatever, everything worked. But I'd like to show one picture here, if I may.
Yep.
Because I'm an engineer, so I like to start with a problem. And this is in Swedish, but it says here that the majority of the Swedes who invested in crypto certificates over the past 6 years lost money. So over the past 6 years, the majority of the Swedes investing in crypto certificates lost money. And then you look at the chart. So here is over the past 6 years, price has gone up 3,000%.
What's in the certificate?
Oh, that was a brilliant piece.
The majority lost money. So,
how did they lose money?
How is that even possible? Like, it's difficult. It's difficult to trade this market and lose money. It's very difficult. Like a monkey would have made a lot of money.
I think I know what happened here. They were in zombie coins. They were in coins that probably were hot 6 years ago, but they didn't rotate out, and that is the problem.
Exactly. They buy when they're feeling the most euphoric. When everyone's talking about something, they go in and buy something. I don't know, XRP or whatever it is, some coin or even Bitcoin, the day that is the peak euphoria. And then it starts going down, and they don't do anything. They feel, it's fine. It's it's going to turn around. They hold all the way down, and then they're feeling the most depressed, and then they sell. That's the bottom. That's where it's turning around, because the bottom is when the last person has given up. That's by definition the bottom. So then they sell, and then they do it all over and all over again. So they do it like systematically wrong. And so if I can give some advice, is to have some kind of methodology, which isn't just your gut. And it can be almost any. It can be any methodology would work fine. Cut the losers, hold on to the winners. Don't hold through the downtrend. That's enough. And don't take too big risks. Like Mando said, you don't have to be all in, because then you can't buy the dip. So take less risk. Cut the losers, hold on to the winners, and then it doesn't really matter if you're holding a Bitcoin ETF, or you're holding physical Bitcoin, or you're holding MicroStrategy, or another proxy, or one of the altcoins in uptrend. Everything has worked, but people do the beginner simple mistakes that are frankly quite easily avoidable.
Yeah.
So
let's jump into some questions regarding Solana. Is it dead? Is Sui taking over? All that type of stuff. This chart is important to see. Basically, one chain makes all the revenue over all others combined for 7 months in a row. That's green. That's Solana. And literally, it is the DApp revenue is reflective of how much the chain is used, and all of the actions, 70% of the transactions, etc., happen on one chain. Mando, have you seen this chart, and is it significant? Do you see the revenue dominance going away, if there is such a thing as revenue dominance? Just made that up.
No, I think Solana is easily the best chain for all of this sort of stuff. It has the best UI UX. All the apps are the best. It's I think it can dominate for a long time. What I would say is that the value of a chain isn't necessarily just this. Like Bitcoin has no revenue. XRP, I don't even know where
it's 1,200 users. Yeah,
it doesn't have much revenue. And I would say that Solana, if a blockchain was just based on activity, or at least the L1 valuation was just based on activity, Solana, it could arguably be worth more than Bitcoin, but
20 times more. Yeah,
right. But it's not. And I think that's something that Solana, with time, I think will hopefully get as well. At the moment, obviously, inflation, they didn't move to reduce it at the last vote, but it's still inflating like 4 or 5%. So it's really good for this like high throughput. We're going to do so much with the chain, and I think over time it's going to progress as that inflation comes down to being more of a, not necessarily just like a store of value, but like, yeah, maybe it's it gets more of the metrics that people sometimes give to things like XRP, Bitcoin, ETH. And at the moment, it feels like you've got to use Solana. So I think Solana is setting itself up for being relevant for a long, long time. But I think just looking at the top 5 coins, that you can see that this is not the only thing that drives value.
Yeah, and people, people can be kind of very fragile mid bull run. And remember, markets are designed to wreck your heads. This is a question from Casey Investor. I'm going to kick this to Marty. Please cover price manipulation on Solana. Losing hopes now for the price targets at this point. Literally, we were sub $100 a few weeks ago. Now it's basically $180. And yes, the all-time high is nearly 300. What do you see as the lay of the land here? Is it manipulation, Marty, or is it everybody just playing with other things, or are meme coins taking the oxygen from the room? How do you see this?
I think first of all, the retail world has been extremely poorly educated on how markets work. Just go and learn about markets before you make assumptions. First of all, remember, there's always a sell for every buy, and there's always a buy for every sell. So the price is not going up because people are buying it. It's going up because people are selling it at a different price. Bid and ask. So when you see the price of Solana go up to 300 and then automatically come down, understand that that's not necessarily because people are selling, even though we do know people were selling. Meme coin people were selling. People that made a lot of money in memes cashed out to Solana and then moved back to dollars. It's the large buyers are making large offers at lower prices. So if there's a massive order for $1 billion of Solana at $70 right now, somebody will pick that up and the price of Solana will drop to $70 for a while. Understand the dynamics of a market. We've been educated this narration that when a candle goes up, people are buying, and when a candle goes down, people are selling. That's not how markets work, and you need to understand markets before you make those things. Solana is on a long-term mission. I got to pose you guys a good question here. How come we've got 7 Solana reserve companies now registered? We have 4 Bitcoin reserve companies. Why don't we have an Ethereum reserve company? Question for you guys.
Cardano Strategies. I'm opening it next week.
Why don't we have Cardano Strategies? Why don't we have Ethereum Strategies? It's a great question.
Yeah.
We've got 5 Solana reserve companies already registered. This is a good question.
Yeah.
It's on a much bigger mission. It hasn't even started. Solana is going to be a vastly different network this time next year.
I think Marty, you can
the duopoly. It's going to take on Apple. Yeah. It's going to take on Google.
You can sum up, Marty, what you're saying is what Warren Buffett used to say. Markets are mechanisms to move wealth from the impatient to the patient. And Tyler Fitzpatrick nails it here. Patience. It's a virtue when investing. Let's talk about another rapid thing. I always talk about how risk happens fast. Let me see if I can pop this up. So many slides. This took me by surprise. And by the way, I do have a small position in Raydium. Raydium was the dominant AMM. And all of a sudden, and Marty, Armando, this is for you. All of a sudden, you got this thing called PumpSwap. Okay? It comes from obscurity 6 weeks ago to doing 42% of all DEX revenue. Okay? This AMM, 42% out of nowhere. Making
I wouldn't say obscurity. I wouldn't say obscurity. This is the native DEX of Pump Fund, which
is like Pump Fund's DEX, correct.
It's been the number one app in all of crypto for the last year. What they have done is, and they've actually announced something today, where they're basically giving some of their fees now to anyone who launches a coin on PumpFun. So there is a DEX war going on right now on Solana.
Yeah.
It's between PumpFun, Raydium, and there was a new entrant that came out in the last week called Boop that tried to gain some market share. And in response, PumpFun has come out today and said, we're actually just going to start giving out money to people who launch coins on us.
So they're resuscitating the meme revolution again, correct?
I think people are missing the forest for the trees. I mean, the biggest news last week on Solana had nothing to do with meme coins. It's the Superstate integration. I don't know if people are aware what Superstate is. Superstate is the leading company to bring registered public stock on chain. That is the Solana goal. As I said before, the meme coins are a great liveness test, but understand those meme coins one day will be public companies. Okay, you'll be trading actual company tokens, and that's coming soon. Sol Strategies is registered now to be the first one, and also we saw Figure Markets last week register to have the first legal on-chain certificate. So what we're seeing is a move in a very accelerated form, faster than we've ever seen, to enable you to go public on blockchain, not on the stock market. And that is where Solana is sitting. If you looked at Anatoly and Matt Resnick came out with a paper called Solana, the on-chain NASDAQ, go and give it a read. It'll answer all the questions. Don't get caught up in the meme coin thing. Understand the meme coin is used to test the technology. Those things that mean nothing, those tokens, will eventually be Tesla and Apple.
They're forging steel. I want to get back to Mando for a second on that, and also the comments you made. We have this DEX war happening. These guys are cutting each other's throats. I mentioned on a video on Tuesday, and how that is actually very good for the users and very good for adoption. So you got DEXs within a chain cutting each other's throats. What happens when a DEX from another chain tries to compete? They're not battle hardened like these guys are. Thoughts on that, Mando?
No one can compete with the Solana meme coin machine, right? And to put in perspective, PumpFun has made nearly $1 billion since over the last year, right? It's definitely in the hundreds of millions, and run rate it will be close to $1 billion. So it's making as much as L1. The big question was why there hadn't been a competitor that did this. Was a bit more Web3, a bit more like, right, we're going to share that revenue with the users in some way. And so PumpFun is now moving to that a bit more of a model. If they do this, this could drive volume even more on Solana, right? Like if they're going to start giving out some of these fees. So I think this is beneficial for the ecosystem. It's beneficial for activity on Solana that they're going to share around the love a little bit.
Yeah. And CTO, I know you were in Raydium. Are you still in that position? And by the way, I just want to say, I always say allocations matter. When you play with alts, Sol alts, or any other altcoin or meme coin, make sure it's just play money. You know, these things are hyper risky, and you see how fast they change. So, CTO, Raydium, what's going on?
Yeah, so I can bring up the chart. But if I can just circle back on say one thing on Solana first. So actually, despite the recovery of Ethereum, the Sol to ETH dynamics hasn't actually changed. It's still in the same channel. You can see it here. So this is Sol to ETH. So that's worth taking note of, to kind of, because it felt very dramatic, the change in ETH, and it is dramatic, but it hasn't actually changed the dynamic. So that's on that. Then we talked about Raydium. So let's bring up that one. And let's look at the BTC chart. So Ray had this huge breakdown. I thought I had a better chart here somewhere. Yeah. I mean, perhaps this one is better. It lost in USD value. Raydium lost 83% from the top to bottom. But then it actually found support and has bounced back from there. Actually, the huge dramatic change there that we saw is not really reflected in the Raydium chart, but the Ray to BTC hasn't completely recovered back yet. Yeah, I mean, this turned quite bad a long time ago. And was it in February? And it seemed like a fantastic project in so many ways, but clearly they got very challenged by the own AMM from Pump.fun, and clearly it was successful when they launched. So I don't know. I want to see some perhaps even clearer recovery in this.
Okay, we've got two more brief topics left. I got to pick up the pace. We try to keep this to an hour.
We didn't talk about the strategic Bitcoin states proving 3 states.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, New Hampshire,
Arizona, and Missouri.
I got my little New Hampshire plate. Yeah, they're coming, and they're trying to front run the U.S. Federal Strategic Business Reserve, but that's also huge, and that's why I said at the very beginning, there's simply not enough to go around. It's crazy. Let's talk about this for 60 seconds, Marty. A lot of people are asking questions about Bitcoin yields on Solana DeFi. Is it risky? Would you do it? Yes or no? And is it safe with Zeus? A lot of people are interested, but they're not exactly jumping in.
No, I do it. The way I work with my community is if something new comes along, we do a little test with small amounts of money, and we all analyze it and see where its weaknesses, where its strengths are, and we usually advise the project. That's all we do, kind of advisors. So you should fix this. Just look at that. There's a spelling mistake here. This took too long. Why does it say that? And you must understand that all of these Bitcoin reserve companies, all of these Solana reserve companies, there's only one reason they're doing this, and that is to earn yield. Okay? Yield starts with a Y, but it's a very big word. You can hold assets, but what you want is to live on the yield. You want to make cash, passive income, whilst you just hold your assets, which go up and down. Now with Bitcoin, when you buy Bitcoin, you sort of rely on more people to buy Bitcoin for the price to go up. That's pretty much the only way you get appreciation with Bitcoin. But with these other execution layer networks like Sui and Solana and Ethereum, you can earn yield. Why? Because there's such high volume. Remember, these are networks that are constantly moving thousands of transactions between individual P2P users or institutions, in the case of Ethereum. And each of those transactions involves a small amount of escrow in the decentralized swap, of which the person who lent the assets to support the escrow gets a percentage of the fee. And so you can make 0.01% a day on your Solana just by putting it into a stablecoin pool. So anybody who swaps between USDT and USDC pays you a small amount to lend your Solana. So what we're seeing is a lot of companies taking advantage of that. They're buying Solana, putting it in validators, offering staking rewards to the shareholders as a dividend, and benefiting from the yield.
And to remind everybody, lending is inherently risky, counterparty risk. Never lend more than 10% of your bag. Number one golden rule. We're going to wrap up with a final thing, and sorry to go fast.
Sure.
Everybody is excited and anxious about AI trading, market dynamics. CTO, you hit on this at the very beginning, that if you are trading on the 5-minute bar chart, the algos are going to beat you. There's a lot of this happening right now. Michael Saylor mentioned how they're using AI to buy Bitcoin and analyze data and determine when to go. And this is just going to accelerate. One thing I've learned over the last 35 years, when there is a honeypot of money available, people will invest heavily to exploit that. So I'm going to go around the clock real quick. Start with you, Mando. AI trading and market dynamics. What impact does it have on the retail investor, and where should they focus? I think they should focus out on the 4-hour chart or the daily chart, not necessarily on the 1-minute chart or 5-minute chart. Is this real? And is it going to be ubiquitous in short order? I think you're muted again.
You're going to have very, very little edge on short time frames. That's like obvious, but I think that's the case. That's always been the case. Like this, we've always had bots trading for a long, long time. I think focus on long-term trends. That makes a lot of sense. In terms of where you can invest, obviously, like we talk about all the major AI firms. Interestingly, that whole AI agent sector has come back very, very strong. It's back up to 12 billion. I think it started the year at 9. So that's and a lot of that is based on this sort of stuff again. It's right. We're going to create agents that are going to be able to trade for you better than you. They've been the big winners. All the major marketplaces are back up. Virtuals is back at 2 billion. It's been a big resurgence all on the back of all of this. So you can get involved in some of that stuff, or you can get involved in the major AI firms, I would reckon.
Awesome. CTO, quick thoughts on this one before we wrap?
Yeah, so 3 points then. Anyone who message you saying that they have an AI trading bot that uses volatility and will make you 20% per month, that's a scam. So we start there. Day trading used to be a job, like someone looking almost like on the screen there, someone sitting, entering 5 minutes, exiting the next 10 minutes, 1 hour in, 2 hours out, and so on. That I think is dead, because AI can do that much better and faster. It will always be a millisecond faster and better. It's easy to train. But some things AI cannot solve because there is no training data. There is no precedence. For example, like, will Bitcoin make it? Will Ethereum come back? Will Solana be the winner? Or will it be Sui? Will one of them completely take over the financial market? AI cannot answer that. They can talk around it, and but they don't know. They don't know anything about that answer, and they cannot quite figure it out. So those long-term trends, like Mando said, they remain. They haven't changed. But the short-term trading, I think, is already completely taken over by machines. Don't try to make that your living today. I don't think so. You're muted, James.
And back in the 1990s, this is an interesting stat, 90% of day traders, 95% of day traders lost in the 90s. And that was before AI and algos and bots. Marty, final thoughts from you. AI trading dynamics, what type of bots do you have operating for you?
I think absolutely. There's no doubt AI will play a massive role in the new markets. I think crypto is and eventually digitized equities in all forms are going to be traded heavily by AI, but I think the thing people don't understand is that probably it's going to be at the institutional level, large size trading, OTC desks, market makers, things like that, to analyze liquidity, analyze open interest, to make decisions very fast and rapidly. So you can almost see it as a new set of indicators, but I think AI versus AI trading is the very interesting one. And that is where you autonomously run your AI instrument and it automatically trades for you, and you don't really have any hands-on approaches. All you just check your balance every day. If it's going up, you're happy. If it's going down, you're not happy. You don't really care how it did it. So the distinguishing which assets it bought and sold becomes no longer that interesting, right? It's finding obscure things with strange setups that you wouldn't look at normally. And I think that's really the interesting thing, is that these AI bots now analyze the entire market, which you can't really do as a human. You can look at 3 or 4 charts a day, but there's no way I can watch 400 charts for any kind of an impulse. These AI bots that you can run now, I have some that show you abnormal volumes, MACD discrepancies, and it's some obscure thing that you would never even be looking at. And you can reap the rewards. Obviously, if you set them up correctly, you can have them automatically trade for you against the wallet. So I think, yes, absolutely, AI is going to change the nature of the markets entirely. In my opinion, it's only going to enable growth in market volume. I think we have no idea the volumes that are coming from AI trading. Probably 10x more volume on these new markets. In fact, I spoke to somebody out of the new Texas exchange, and they're making an entire data center specific for people to rent and run AI bots within the exchange building itself, much like they run underneath the New York Stock Exchange, a lot of high-frequency trading data centers. They're doing the same thing, but with AI in mind. Because remember, Texas is not only the #1 solar state, cheapest power, it's also the AI leader. Tesla's moving to Texas. They're all moving to Texas. So Texas is becoming a digital hub, and look for a lot of AI trading coming out of the new Texas exchange. Yep.
Yeah. So basically, in summary, everybody, you've got to find an edge to compete in this new world. And secondarily, AI is coming for us all, even us four sitting here. So in the meantime, leverage the next 2 years. Now, the market is completely on fire. You've got DeFi Dev up 23%. Tesla up 7%, $21, $22. Nvidia up, but Bitcoin and crypto are kind of a little bit hanging in there. What's your forecast for the week ahead, Mando, when we wrap? 10 seconds. Good, bad, and different.
I thought we would go sideways last week. I kind of feel like the level of risk taking, it may mean we go sideways. I think we're going to hit all-time high very soon, though.
Good. Bullish. Marty, next week, this week, what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, just simply, if you look at a liquidation heat map, we've got a large cluster of longs that opened up over the weekend, just under 102,000. I expect the price to take out those last 50x levels to 102 and then rebound, probably chase the next level up, which is 106.5. Always understand that the market will pull back. It's not pulling back because people are necessarily selling. It's pulling back because the exchanges need to go and collect longs. Everybody is so bullish, they go long. That's how these companies make money. It's just a business. What you need to do is wait for those moments and then do your DCAs or your longing and play accordingly. But I think we'll range trade and then eventually hit all-time high this week. This time next week on the show, I believe we'll be at a new all-time high.
Oh, wow. Just two very bullish takes right there. CTO, final one for you. And is there a double top forming on gold here? I think gold has stopped.
I can answer both quickly if I can show the chart here.
Yep. Hang on. Get it. Oh, hold on a second. I have to remove something. Why is it not showing? Oh, yeah. I got to press this button. Hold on. There you go. All right.
Yeah. So for now, we are rejected at this resistance. You can see it here today. But if we break through, we're not going to miss it. So for me, I predict less. I react more. If we break through here, there's no chance to miss it, guys. So that's my plan. If we break through and really shoot off here, it can go fast, guys. That's what I can say about that. Let's look at gold. So a double top means if the low between the two tops is breached, and it almost has, but not quite. You see that we zoom in here. The low is down here at 3,200 something. And price has not dropped below that yet, but it's very close. So it could absolutely be a small double top on the daily. But I think gold needs to a little bit to zoom out. It can back up all the way to 3,000 and still hold this steep uptrend. But it definitely looked already, when was it? A couple of weeks ago, 21st April candle. This looked like a top candle. And I think we talked about it here even.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think people just once again, before we go, guys, look on TradingView. Everybody, go look at BTC XAU. That's Bitcoin and gold. Bitcoin and gold is our new correlation. Bitcoin has moved more to a correlation with gold than it does with a stock. And that's your new chart. Have a look at that. Pull that up, CTO, just so people, and give them a little bit of a rundown. BTC XAU.
And it did top 2 weeks ago. So, and then Bitcoin went on a ripper.
There you go. As you can see, Bitcoin is gaining on gold, and this higher low movement is extremely important to watch.
Exactly. So we talked about it. Like this is Bitcoin versus gold, and so when Bitcoin goes up against gold, this one goes higher. And we were a little bit rejected here, but now we're moving up again. So this one could also break out.
There you go.
Not so far from here.
Yeah, click at year to date so people understand the difference year to date, because it's much more stunning down the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. Let's zoom in.
YTD at the bottom. Yeah.
My
It
point
is
is,
so slow
when we
today,
see
guys.
this breakout,
Trading view is so slow.
when we see this
that-
breakout, we will have a seismic candle on Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
So this is a lot. Like it looks like very small here, but from here, if we get the breakout, that's like 60%, and you know, from the bottom here, it's enormous. Like from
That's
here up to where we are
yeah.
now, that's 250%, 3.5 times. So it looks
And that
small,
could be
but-
our banana zone, everybody.
Oh yeah,
Not dead. I know we're running real late, so sorry for those of you who are missing dinner or late for dinner, going to be in trouble. Thank you, Mando. Thank you, CTO. Thank you, Marty. Great show as always. And thank you to the audience. Don't forget the links for everybody below. Check out the newsletter from Mando. It's a must-have every morning. And Marty, all the great stuff, all the posts, incessant posts, 24/7, and CTO posts, channel, newsletter, tools, all that stuff. Thank you all. Have a good night, everybody. And thank you to the mods too.
Love
Bye,
it
guys.
always.
Everyone.
Appreciate you guys' energy. See you again soon.
Cheers.